You are listening to WBHM, Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back to the Paranormal Pride. This is our last 14 minutes of the show. So you guys get your questions out there for Frank Bennett, the author of The Encounter with the Aberdeen Wild Man. We've got some questions in the chat, but I'm going to let him finish the story he was talking about, because that, when we left, he was talking about suicide and that not being him.
Yeah, like I told the audience in Fort Myers, I opened up a second segment with this. I don't ghost hunt. Why don't I ghost hunt? Because I already know what's there. I've lived to it. I've lived under spiritual torment, and I've been driven to extremes by it. I've been haunted and tormented by strange creatures, and I don't want any more of it, so I don't really want to go ghost hunting and, go back into that. Thank you very much. But when I was a teenager being oppressed by powerful spiritual forces, the only thing they would let my mind know is that, you're worthless, you're a mistake, you have no future, nobody wants you, nobody likes you. Why are you even still alive? The only answer I ever had to anything in my mind was committing suicide. And you realize, even as it's going on, this isn't right, because you try to think about other things and you can't. It's like the section of the book I wrote on about disturbing images. Beginning when I was the same age, about 13, 14, I would have these images pop into my mind out of nowhere of living things, people or animals being horribly eviscerated. Growing up in the 60s and 70s, we didn't have the kind of horror movies that they have now. I mean, everything's on the table now. Back then, we didn't see images like this. And there I am, this kid, young dumb guy, having these weird pictures just pop into my mind when I'm sitting in math class, trying to look at the teacher, but all I see is some image of some animal being torn apart, and I didn't understand why. These things haunted me all the way up through the early 90s. I would be sitting in church trying to pay attention to what the pastor's trying to tell me, and in between me and the pastor are these images of eviscerations, and it gets creative as you go along. You got female body parts inserted into it, just things that distract you from what you're trying to focus on. You just know what's right and what's wrong, what's healthy and what's not healthy, and I just know these things didn't belong there. But you see, being a young dumb guy, I had no reason to believe it could be, paranormal, because I didn't even know what the heck that was.
Well, no, none of us did back then. We just thought, we just don't talk about that stuff and things like that, just didn't talk about it. And didn't you also make a promise to your mother that you wouldn't paranormal investigate?
No, I didn't promise that to my mother. I promised it to God.
Okay. I knew you made a promise to somebody.
I made a lot of promises to God, one of which I'll never, ever complain ever again. That's a big one. I determined in the book that my mother is partially the source of some of these things, because I determined in my studies that spirits tend to follow family lines. We're Italian, and in old Italy, like I say in the book, if anything happens to you, they're going to probably first call a medicine woman or a gypsy, a spiritualist, before they call the doctor. And in many cases, they were the same thing anyways, witch doctors. And so you walked hand in hand. Your family line walks hand in hand with witchcraft. So I had a lot of reasons to think my mom had something to do with some of these things.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about that in the book as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like I say, I kind of read it as you made a promise to your mom that you wouldn't, but that could have just been my memory playing tricks on me. But we do have a couple questions in chat, too, for you.
Yeah.
So go ahead and answer that.
Well, I don't know. I was enjoying the sound of my voice. No, I'm kidding. Oh, Lord.
The question
I never actually discussed any of these things with my mother. Quite honestly, I haven't talked to my mother in about 20 years.
Okay. Well, then we just won't talk about that. Brenda asks, have you done or witnessed an exorcism?
No.
Okay. Well, that's easy. And then Ron asks, is Frank going to the Ozark UFO conference this year?
As we stand now, no, because I've been emailing them every 2 weeks because I applied to be a speaker, and I've heard nothing out of them. So sorry, I got other shows I got to answer back to. Sorry, guys, I'm probably not coming.
Yeah, it's April 12th through 14th, so that's pretty soon as far as planning goes. So
yeah, people don't realize when you go to a show and you see Denise there at her table and you see me there at our table, it was planned months in advance. A lot of times we're not invited guests; we pay for our tables, and there's planning involved. There's only celebrities get what we call comped, handed a table in a hotel room and stuff like that. Yeah. And there's a lot of planning involved.
Yeah, there's a lot. I'm finding that out with the phone call I had with Tom before we left to go to St. Louis last week. So, Brenda says, I like the froggy one with the wrestler in it, Rowdy Roddy Piper. That's a long time ago, Rowdy Roddy Piper.
Is that a country singer?
No, he's a wrestler. Is that a country singer?
Yeah.
He used to play on Atlantis on TBS wrestling back when we lived in Arkansas. Ron never watched any of that wrestling.
Yeah, I know. He didn't know who Jerry Lawler was.
No, and that was in Memphis, and we were living in Blytheville. So
yeah.
And then there's all kinds of stories we could go with there. And the thing is I don't know a lot about wrestling. I mean, honestly, I don't. I just know a few things from 1981, probably 1981 to 1983, and that's it. And maybe some old stuff from when I was a little kid in New Jersey that my dad used to watch, but there wasn't that much wrestling on TV because that was violent. In the 60s and 70s, there wasn't a lot of that on. Yeah.
Well, I grew up watching WWF wrestling out of Baltimore. Mm-hmm. And so I grew up on that, and of course we got WCW from the Mid-South, and you got the Chicago market in there. So we grew up in a great place for pro wrestling.
Yeah, Blytheville, Arkansas, we had TBS, WGN, and something out of Memphis.
Atlanta.
They would play that. Yeah, but like I said, we had a few things, and I wasn't with Ron, and it was Cubs baseball, Cardinals baseball, Atlanta Braves baseball. Because WGN was on our cable. Yeah, well, back then, just to be fair, Ron did try out for the Cardinals after we got married. So, and his dad was a really good baseball player. I heard more stories about his baseball playing this past week than I ever did before when he was playing for the Razorbacks in Arkansas, not far from Eureka Springs, by the way, down there in Fayetteville. He walked onto the team and started. So apparently he was really good back then. And
did I answer that question from chat completely?
Yep.
Good. I was afraid I missed that.
Well, no, I'm pretty sure you did. And then the next question was, are you planning on going to the Kansas City Paranormal Conference? That was asked by Carl. I'm pretty sure that he hasn't gotten. It's the first weekend in August. He's the guy who won't get back to you either.
Yes, I know. That's a big deal in this business. Promoters just aren't good at keeping up with people, and that's just the way it is.
Well, I will send you the information on the Spook Show Con so that you'll have that in your inbox. I'll probably do that tonight or tomorrow. So you'll have that.
Well, that'd be great because I want to come back to Kansas City. I want to come back and see all these people I met the first time because I met a lot of great people at Kansas City the first go round. But I'd
Well,
like to come back for these things.
I don't know when that will be, but Spook Show Con is in DeKalb, Illinois, and that's where we're going to be next in August. We also have one in we're going to be doing one in on June 1st at Mineral Springs, but I don't know if outside authors are invited to that. But I'll tell you about it and let you make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Oh, by the way, before it leaves my mind, you asked me this near the first part of the show, and we changed our subject here. But you asked me about UFOs.
Yeah.
And I can wrap this up pretty quick. I've had my own experiences.
Okay.
I'm not an experiencer, but I've seen about 4 UFOs in my lifetime. The most recent of which was Booth Bay Harbor about 5 years ago up in Maine. And to make a long story short, when I was just finished this speech in Fort Myers, the last segment was about UFOs. And what I did is that I put a split screen of ghost orb footage captured around the internet right alongside NASA footage of UFO footage captured in orbit and in the skies. And I asked the audience, remove the backgrounds. Tell me what the difference between these two things are. And nobody could, because when I examined them carefully, ghost orbs and UFOs, they exhibit almost identical characteristics. That was suspicious to me because it is to my understanding that UFOs aren't supposed to be from around here. However, they seem to exhibit characteristics we find common in the paranormal. If you're not suspicious about that, more research is required, I think. But that audience was unable to tell me the difference between the two.
Interesting fact, my cousin's son, who I guess happens to technically be my cousin as well, he works for NASA. He's an astronaut. So he's not the janitor, okay? He's an astronaut, and he is getting his time in so he can go to the ISS, the International Space Station. And I asked him to be on my show, but because of his job, he can't. Even if I make him anonymous, he can't. But he has told me, personally, I asked him, I said, when there are unidentified flying objects in the sky, what do you guys call them? He goes, we call them identified objects because we know what they are. There are no such things as unidentified flying objects to them. I thought that was interesting.
A lot of people in the business. Yeah, go into YouTube, everybody, and you're going to find disclosures from so many people who have worked in the business. There are hundreds and thousands of them. And the more you listen to them, the more you get the impression that not only the government knows more than they're telling, that's a given. We have been trying to copy what we see in the skies with our own technology since we've been able to fly. Examples of that are sitting in the Smithsonian Museum right now. At the Dulles facility in Fairfax, Virginia. But has it occurred to anybody as you're watching these machines in the sky and these orbs in the sky and the lights in the sky and all that, has it really ever occurred to anybody that the machine itself that you're seeing actually is the alien?
It could be the living, breathing creature who, we may never have thought of that before. Until War of the Worlds.
The original was great. The Tom Cruise remake was horrible.
I kind of have to agree with that. That one kind of made me go, huh? But a whole different problem. Well, I'm going to have to say thank you so much for coming on. I know that this was a difficult show for me to do coming back from my week off of everything. But I appreciate you coming on and talking to all of us. I think Brenda really enjoyed you a lot, and so did all my other guests. And I would love to have you on again sometime in the future, and we will make sure we get that booked. Everyone, please tune in next week when I have on author Kat Gash. She's a paranormal author with Haunted Road Media, and a really good friend of mine. We ran into each other intentionally in Gettysburg when we were on vacation.
You enjoyed it so much you backed up and ran into him again, didn't you?